August 26, 1346. The French army had every conceivable advantage. 30,000 soldiers against 9,000 Englishmen, the best knights in Europe, in a battle on their own soil. It seemed that the outcome was a foregone conclusion and that the small English army would simply be wiped off the face of the earth. But on that day, something happened on the field at Crécy that changed the rules of warfare forever. One technology perfected by simple peasants put an end to centuries of aristocratic cavalry domination. It was not just a battle, but the execution of an entire era. Watch the video to the end to find out how a handful of archers made knights obsolete in a single battle, and why that day became a black day for the European aristocracy. What if I told you that absolutely everything you firmly believed about medieval knights and their invincibility is a romantic untruth and a myth? Before the famous Battle of Crécy in 1346, the typical French knight was the embodiment of the military power and technological superiority of his time. He was clad in the finest steel armor that the advanced technology of the time could produce for a huge sum of money, and sat proudly on a powerful war horse, specially trained since childhood, which cost a fortune. This was the pinnacle of Europe's military elite, accustomed to victory over any opponent and undefeated by commoners throughout centuries of domination. For the proud French noblemen of high birth, war was above all a matter of personal honor, knightly glory, and an opportunity for enrichment through ransoms. They rode confidently into battle as if it were another tournament or celebration, joyfully anticipating individual duels with worthy opponents and rich spoils in the form of ransoms for prisoners. The very idea that they, noble warriors, could be seriously opposed by some despicable commoners without pedigree seemed deeply offensive and absurd to them. The knights considered themselves invincible warriors, created for war by God himself, and did not perceive the infantry as a serious threat to their dominance on the battlefield. Their combat tactics were extremely simple, straightforward, and proven by many centuries of successful battles. A powerful, unified frontal attack by heavy armored cavalry en masse on the center of the enemy formation. This crushing blow from armored horsemen at full gallop was supposed to easily crush any enemy infantry, turning an organized formation into a chaotic, panicked retreat in a matter of minutes. They had no doubt about their success and believed that this time, too, everything would go according to the usual, proven scenario, ending in their triumphant victory. The French knights were blinded by their past successes and saw no need to change the tactics that had worked for centuries against feudal militias. King Edward III's English army, on the other hand, consisted mainly of ordinary common people without titles or coats of arms. They were yeomen, free, prosperous peasant landowners who, from early childhood, had stubbornly learned to wield not an expensive knight's sword, which required strength, but a long yew bow as tall as a man, which required years of training. For them, harsh warfare was not a knightly tournament or a celebration, but hard, dangerous work that had to be done professionally for their king and country in order to return home alive. They did not seek personal glory, but wanted to survive and receive their modest pay for their service. Their psychology and worldview were completely different, radically different from that of knights. They did not seek individual glory in one-on-one duels, but acted as a single, coordinated fighting mechanism under the command of experienced officers. Each disciplined archer knew exactly where he belonged in the dense formation and understood that his personal life and survival depended directly on the discipline, training, and reliability of his neighbors on the right and left. Individualism was deadly dangerous, while collective action was the key to victory and survival for the entire unit. This fundamental contrast between the armies was not simply a difference in weaponry or tactics, but a real clash between two diametrically opposed worlds and philosophies of warfare. On one side stood the aristocratic military elite, with its archaic code of chivalry, individualism, and pursuit of personal glory in combat. On the other side stood a professional, well-trained army of disciplined commoners, relying entirely on iron discipline, coordinated collective action, and new tactics. It was a clash between the old feudal world and the emerging new order, where professionalism triumphed over noble birth. On that fateful August day in 1346 at Crécy, These two opposing philosophies of war and worldviews were about to clash in a decisive, bloody battle that would determine the future. The self-confident French knights did not yet know or suspect that their traditional idea of knightly combat was hopelessly outdated and no longer worked. They proudly rode into battle not toward unexpected glory and triumph, but toward the complete and utter collapse of their entire feudal era and value system. Crécy would become a symbol of the end of the era of knightly dominance on the battlefield and the beginning of a new era of professional armies. Their expensive steel armor, which cost an ordinary family a fortune, was supposed to provide reliable protection against any known cold weapon of the time. Swords, spears, axes. But they were completely unprepared and ill-equipped for the deadly weapon that the cunning English King Edward III had specially prepared for them at their chosen position. It was a revolutionary military technology involving the massive use of long-range weapons, against whose destructive power their renowned steel proved virtually powerless and useless. The English longbow pierced armor at a distance where knights could not respond, which completely changed the rules of war. Before the battle began, the far-sighted King Edward III of England made a strategic decision that many of his own nobles and knights sincerely considered extremely strange and humiliating to their dignity.
United.
He categorically ordered his English knights to dismount from their horses and stand shoulder to shoulder with ordinary peasant archers in a single formation, which was unheard of. It was a revolutionary, unprecedented step that equated a noble aristocrat with a simple peasant in battle, which contradicted the entire feudal hierarchy. For many knights, it was an insult to their honor, but they obeyed the king's order. It was this unusual alliance of aristocrats and commoners, united by a common goal, that was the key to the English crushing victory over a numerically superior enemy. He effectively countered the traditional French cavalry attack with an unbreakable defensive wall of steel formed by dismounted knights and thousands of deadly arrows flying in a continuous stream. The attacking French never understood until the very end what exactly they were facing on the battlefield, why their attacks were repeatedly repelled by this wall of fire and steel. They continued to attack according to the old rules, not realizing that the rules of war had changed forever. It would be very interesting to hear your balanced opinion on these events. What exactly do you think about this historical clash between an aristocratic feudal army based on individual valor and a professional peasant army based on discipline and technology? Write your detailed thoughts in the comments below.